Creamer Media's Engineering News and Mining Weekly is interviewing Mike Ashley, the head of product management at Matique. This interview is taking place amid an emerging global demand for decarbonisation and the use of green hydrogen to decarbonise hard-to-abate sectors in particular. Hi, Mike. It's great to chat to you. Let's kick off this interview by finding out a little more about your company, Matique, and what it does. Can you give us some insight?
Absolutely. Thank you for having me, Martin. So at Matique, we like to say we're building the world's most technologically advanced clean chemistry company. So I'll kick off by breaking down what we mean by that. Really, by clean chemistry, we're talking about chemicals production powered by electricity rather than fossil fuels. The status quo in the chemicals industry is to run their processes based on high temperature, high pressure processes that often use harsh chemical reagents. And so what we're doing is developing electrochemical processes that instead run on electricity, which can be sourced from clean power. And so what this allows us to do is significantly decarbonize chemicals production. And of course, the best known example of this going on today is green hydrogen production. But that same technology stack can be applied to produce a lot more chemicals and fuels than just hydrogen. And that's really what Matique's long-term vision is.
To do this using electrolyzers, one normally uses iridium. And we had the question here, why is iridium used in green hydrogen generation? And why is it so hard to replace?
Absolutely. So really, as you noted, Martin, iridium is a key catalyst material in PEM electrolyzers specifically. And so the reason that iridium is the state of the art is because it's the only known material that can last for really long periods of operation in the field under the harsh acidic and oxidative conditions that you see in PEM electrolyzers. So it's really durable, and it can drive that reaction that splits water into hydrogen and oxygen. And so coming up with a material that holds up as well as iridium does for as long in real world operation has proven to be a very difficult challenge over the past few decades.
And how far have you progressed in developing alternatives that can do with less iridium in the generation of green hydrogen?
Yeah, so we've been hard at work over the past year or so on developing a portfolio of alternatives to iridium. And this is really where, when I say that Matique is building the world's most technologically advanced clean chemistry company, this is where that technological advance is coming in. So our technology suite allows us to very rapidly characterize many design combinations of new materials that can replace iridium in a very short period of time. And so I should add that what I'm talking about is physical world experimentation and not just computer simulation. And so what we're able to do is, in a very short period of time, evaluate tens of thousands of novel materials. And by that, I mean, think of alloys, material combinations or metals combined in controllable ratios, and then evaluate them for their properties. So how well can they hold up under those harsh conditions of PEM electrolyzers? And so over the course of about 6 weeks in the fall of 2023, Matique characterized over 1 million novel materials, that is combinations of metals in controlled ratios, and evaluated them for their properties in PEM electrolyzers. So what we were able to do is identify then about 500 unique novel materials that are all low or with zero iridium that can perform at least as well as iridium in PEM electrolyzers. So we started with this, what we call high throughput experimentation, that allows us to very rapidly evaluate huge combinations of materials, rather huge numbers of combinations of materials. And now what we've been doing is validating those materials in electrolyzers. So running what we call accelerated stress tests in real PEM electrolyzer devices to validate which of those materials we actually anticipate will perform well in real world operation. And so we've been running some of these experiments in partnership with all of the major catalyst manufacturers and validating and qualifying these new materials with dramatically reduced iridium content and driving that towards commercialization.
When you talk of low iridium or even no iridium and dramatically reduced, what sort of percentages are you talking about? And will there still be platinum there? And when will the iridium alternatives be brought to market?
I'll start by saying that the iridium catalyst and the platinum catalyst are separate, and so they're on opposite sides of the electrolyzer. For now, we're focused on the anode side where the iridium catalyst is. And when I say low iridium, we are typically talking about, say, 1/3 or less by mass. So 33% or less by mass is when we start to get really excited. And so we're really working with a range of materials across that, 33% and less down to 0% iridium. And we're validating our sort of high-graded list of material candidates right now under our extended stress testing protocols. And we anticipate announcing a partnership with a catalyst manufacturing partner in Q2 or Q3 of this year, driving towards commercially available low iridium materials in 2025.
And so what are the benefits of low iridium electrocatalysts for electrolyzer and hydrogen companies?
So really we see the challenge of iridium being twofold. So the first is cost. So iridium currently costs about $5,000 an ounce. So it's an extremely precious metal and quite expensive as a raw material into electrolyzers. But the second is really what we think is the more acute pain point, which is supply chain constraints. And so really as PEM electrolyzers start to scale a bit later this decade, we foresee some supply chain crunches associated with iridium where not every electrolyzer manufacturer is going to be able to secure as much iridium as they need to produce the number of PEM electrolyzers that they want to. So just by some quick back of the envelope calculations, currently to make a 1 gigawatt of PEM electrolyzers, you would need about 400 kilograms of iridium. And the global production of iridium is set to be about 7.5 tons per year. That number has remained fairly consistent over the past years and is forecast to remain consistent heading into the future. And so the difference there is it's really to make 1 gigawatt, you need 400 kilograms. To make, or rather the entire global production of iridium is about 7.5 tons. So that's about 1/20th of global production. But the challenge arises because by 2030, current forecast estimates that we'll be deploying close to 10 gigawatts of PEM electrolyzers per year. And so very quickly, we start to run up on what is available for PEM electrolyzers in terms of iridium supply. And of course, this is not to mention all of the things that iridium is used for today. That is other chemical processes, existing electrochemical processes, things like electroplating and electrowinning, and then other applications like electronics and spark plugs. And the demand for iridium for those other applications isn't going to go away either. So we anticipate a pretty significant supply chain constraint associated with iridium in the coming years.
And where else can you apply this work that you've been doing? Which similar electrochemical systems require PGMs?
We really see an interesting and important future ahead for PGMs in electrocatalysis in general. So for the same reasons that iridium is quite strong in PEM electrolyzer applications, that is, it is quite durable over long periods of time, other PGMs like platinum, palladium, rhodium exhibit similar characteristics where they're active and efficient catalysts, and they're very durable over long periods of time. Fortunately, all of those materials are less expensive and less scarce than iridium. And so as the electrolyzer market really picks up, we see an important future for PGMs. I should add that existing applications for PGMs, say automotive catalysis, there's some signs of softening demand for PGMs for internal combustion engine vehicles, for example, say catalytic converters in internal combustion engine vehicles. And we see electrochemistry as a potentially very important substitute demand source for PGMs moving forward. And so, in addition to hydrogen, there are so many more chemical products that we can make in a low carbon way using electrocatalytic processes. And a few examples of those chemical products that we think are quite attractive include acetic acid. So think for the food and beverage and polymers and plastics industry. Adipic acid for nylon production in particular, and a very important engineering plastic, as well as ethylene glycol. So ethylene glycol, an important chemical for use in coolants and antifreeze. So just to give you a few examples of chemicals that are fairly carbon intensive today, that we can help to decarbonize by running through electrochemical processes run on clean power.
Do you foresee yourselves eliminating PGMs altogether, or having them used in a limited way?
Yeah, typically the way we think about this is using PGMs in a limited way rather than eliminating them altogether. So a good reason for that is just because having just a little bit of PGM in your system can improve the durability of your material by quite a bit. So that's really important for long-term durability of your systems. And so, while there's some reason to say, eliminating PGMs entirely would be great because they're expensive, they're fairly scarce, I would say that their performance is so good that it's going to be worth adding in some PGMs into these systems such that we can fully optimize the cost and performance of these systems. So just to recap, I think the addition of small quantities of PGMs will always improve the durability of your system in a meaningful way.
So how will the PGM mining industry be impacted by the rise of this electrochemistry for low carbon chemicals production?
We think that, especially in the short term, we're going to see a pretty significant increase in demand for PGMs from electrochemical processes. As we've been discussing, iridium and platinum are two of the main metals that are used for electrocatalysis today. And so those are the state of the art. As this industry starts to scale, those are going to be the primary catalyst materials used in electrochemistry. However, moving forward, there's going to be limits to how much PGM content is allowed for our use, how much supply is available for electrochemical processes. And that's where technologies like ours comes in, where we can say, okay, we know that PGMs are really important. They can improve the durability of our systems, but the overall cost optimization occurs where we have some intermediate amount of PGM in there, where we don't want to use 100% PGM catalyst for cost and supply chain reasons. But if we go all the way to zero, the durability of these systems may suffer.
What type of companies will benefit the most from the advancement of electrochemical systems?
We think that electrochemical systems are a very important piece of the puzzle to decarbonization targets for the major chemical companies across the globe. So we think electrochemistry uniquely allows you to bypass some of the heaviest emitting parts of chemical processing. Think things like high temperature process heat, compressors to produce high pressure reaction systems. We can completely circumvent these parts of the process by using electrochemical processes. So simply by running these systems on electricity rather than fossil fuel burners, this will allow chemical companies to achieve their decarbonization targets in the coming decades.
And what, in your view, should be the biggest takeaway from this interview we're having right now?
So we think that electrochemistry is an established but still emerging technology type that is going to be a critical piece of the puzzle for overall decarbonization of the chemical sector. So we think that the chemical sector is going to be the hardest to abate sector of the economy due to its inherent ties to fossil fuels, leveraging both fossil fuel feedstocks and fossil fuels to run chemical processes. And we think that electrochemistry is a very key part of the decarbonization strategy of chemical companies across the globe.
That was Creamer Media's Engineering News and Mining Weekly, interviewing Mike Ashley, the head of product management at Matique.